Hi there and welcome. It is September 14th, 2024, and this is Political Dharma with Alan Zundell. I've been covering the non-major party candidates for the presidential race this year, and today I'm going to be catching up on some of these ballot access cases that have been making their way through the courts, where candidates are usually trying to get their name on the ballot. But in the case of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., in some states he's trying to get his name off the ballot because he's suspended his campaign and he wants to support Donald Trump. I'll also say something about the new bill introduced to the U.S. Congress to have ranked choice voting be used in all the congressional elections starting in 2028. But first off, let me present to you that I've got some background decoration this week. My wife happened to we just moved recently, in case you haven't been following my show for long. We moved and my wife recently opened up one of the boxes we hadn't opened yet, and we found this banner that used to be in our front room. So I am putting it up as a beginning and trying to give you a little more decoration in the background. And in case you get tired of looking at me, you can look at that banner and try to decipher what it actually says on it. It's a quote from the Buddha. I don't know where exactly in the Dhammapada that his saying is like this. I haven't checked it out, so maybe fake news. Anyway, I did watch a couple of minutes of the debate this week between Democrat Kamala Harris and Republican Donald Trump, but that's all I needed to determine that I wasn't going to learn anything new about either of them, and they weren't going to change my mind about anything. I am still down on the two major parties. I'm done with them, and that's why I'm covering the non-major party candidates. I've been hoping that someone would break through to at least present a big challenge to the major party candidates, and to at least maybe not if that, because it looked like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was going to be able to do that, but then suspending his campaign means that he's not going to get nearly the number of votes that he maybe might have. He's telling people to vote for somebody else, so it looks like he's not going to have that. And the other candidates don't know if they're going to do any better than they have in the past. So it's not going to be a good year for the alternative candidates, although we had a good run with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It's not over yet, but we'll see. So anyway, I did watch a few minutes of that debate, and there is going to be a debate between these non-major party candidates coming up. The Free and Equal Foundation released a video recently talking about this debate that they're sponsoring. Here's that clip.
Democracy in Action, coming October 2024, presidential debate, location to be announced. Diverse candidates, real issues, your choice. Stream live on Rumble. Free and Equal Elections Foundation. Visit freeandequal.org.
Now, if you notice there, they have not chosen a date yet, and as I find out the details of this event, I will be informing you in my future videos of what they're going to be doing. This is going to be in October sometime. They've invited a number of candidates, including Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Last time they did this, they had Chase Oliver of the Libertarian Party, Jill Stein of the Green Party, and Randall Terry of the Constitution Party. So watching this, it's going to be live streamed on Rumble and probably in some other places. It's a good way to learn more about who these other candidates are and see if there's somebody you want to give your vote to because their views are somewhat like yours, or you just want to register a protest against the dominance of the major parties and how difficult they make it for any competitors to get into this race. So check it out. I will be watching that, maybe bringing my impressions of the debate afterward as that transpires. So we're reaching the deadlines for the states to determine exactly who is or who is not going to be on their ballots this year. Here in California, I'll be getting a mail-in ballot sometime in early October, so they have to decide these things. And in a lot of other states, you're going to have absentee ballots or military who can vote, but they're stationed abroad, so they're going to get their ballots early. So these decisions have to be made, and we're at the stage where lawsuits that are challenging decisions by Secretary of State about ballot access are moving from the state courts into the federal courts, where their final determination will be made. So let's take a look at some of the things that are happening here. Now, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a special case because he's trying to get on the ballot in some states where he thinks that would help Donald Trump, and he's trying to get his name off the ballot in other states where he thinks his presence on the ballot might hurt Donald Trump. So it's kind of unusual. Let's start out with New York, where he's had a continuing problem there, getting on the ballot from the get-go. The issue here was whether he had listed his residence accurately. He said he was a resident of New York, even though he hasn't lived there in a long time, and they challenged this. So in the state courts, the Court of Appeals this week refused to hear his case. So it's dead now in the state court system, but he also had a case going in the federal courts, and unfortunately for him, he lost the court. He lost that decision this week. I don't know if he's going to try to appeal it up to the Court of Appeals in the federal systems, but if you look at this article, and most of these articles are going to be from Ballot Access News, which is a very excellent source if you want to follow this stuff. Richard Winger, the author of this and the longtime Ballot Access, watchdog, in that final paragraph, he says that Kennedy's going to have a problem if he wants to bring this up higher than the district court in the federal system, because if he has tried to rely on the Trump versus Anderson decision that the U.S. Supreme Court determined, maybe if he had not suspended his campaign, he could have a case saying that, the Supreme Court said there should not be a patchwork of laws from state to state, confusing people about who is or isn't going to be on their ballot because the requirements are so different. This thing about residency would be a very strong thing to bring to the Supreme Court as something that each state has different laws about. Which state, how the states determine where your residence is different from state to state. And so this could have been good, but Kennedy now doesn't really have much of a leg to stand on as far as arguing that the states are creating a patchwork, because he himself, by withdrawing from some states and trying to get his name on the ballot in other states, is creating a patchwork himself. So I don't know if he's going to appeal this, but I don't think that Supreme Court decision is going to help him much. And to my mind, that's very unfortunate, because I would have liked to have seen him bring it to the Supreme Court and have them make a decision here that could bring state laws more into conformity, make it easier for independent and minor party candidates to know exactly what they need to do to get on the ballot. So that's in a case where he's trying to get his name on the ballot, where he's trying to get his name off the ballot. And one of these is Michigan, where he was the nominee, where he still is the nominee of the Natural Law Party. Now, this was a real back and forth thing rather than like in New York, the courts were consistently ruling against Kennedy. Here, originally, he was put on the ballot, and then the state Court of Appeals allowed him to withdraw, but then the Michigan Supreme Court put him back on the ballot. So this has gone through the state system, and he failed there to get his name off the ballot. And so he decided this week to bring a federal lawsuit to get his name off the ballot there. And that's not been heard yet, so we don't know how that's going to be determined, but they'll have to hear this fairly soon to get it finished and done with. He also has been trying to get his name off the ballot in Wisconsin. Both Michigan and Wisconsin are swing states. In Wisconsin, he appealed to the State Court of Appeals on Monday, so it's still in the state court system. And in North Carolina, which is a swing state as well, the Supreme Court there let him withdraw his name from the ballot. So it's getting really confusing to even follow where he's trying to get on and where he's trying to get off, and how the courts are ruling in these different cases. But that's the fault, really, of this whole patchwork system of ballot access cases. And as I said, I really wish these cases would have helped make things more consistent across the states, so minor party and independent candidates could have an easier time knowing exactly what they're going to be in for. These laws are such a maze that it's almost impossible for people to work their way through it, and to deal with all the lawsuits costs a lot of time and money for these kind of candidates. So the other candidates of the minor parties and also independent candidate Cornel West are also involved in lawsuits and ballot access cases. Let's take a look at the Green Party specifically. I'm not going to try to go through every single case involving all these candidates because there's simply too many of them. But here are a couple of interesting ones. In Nevada, the Green Party and Jill Stein had presented, a while back, they presented the kind of petition they're going to use for gathering signatures to get on the ballot. They presented this to the Nevada Secretary of State, and they said, no, it's not, it doesn't conform with our requirements for a signature petition. Use this form instead. So they went ahead and used the form that the Secretary of State gave them, and they gathered all their signatures and they brought it in, and then they were told there's a problem because they used the wrong form. So they were kicked off the ballot in Nevada for doing exactly what the Secretary of State's office had told them to do. And they brought this through the state court system, and then this week the Nevada Supreme Court voted to keep the Green Party off the ballot. And this is another back and forth one. They have been off and on, depending on which level of the courts it's at. And it's, I think it's the Democratic Party. Yeah, look at there at the story on your screen. The Democratic Party is the other side of this battle with the Green Party. The court majority acknowledges, you look at the highlighted part in Ballot Access News. This is by Richard Winger, as most of these articles are from the Ballot Access News by Richard Winger, who's one of the co-publishers of that online. The court majority acknowledges that the Secretary of State's error was responsible for this, but and said that the substantial compliance with the statutes was good enough, but still, they knocked him off the ballot, and this eliminates the ability of Nevada voters to cast a vote for Jill Stein because there is no write-in votes there. You cannot do a write-in vote in every state. Again, it's a patchwork going from state to state. So in Nevada, unless they bring it to federal court, and they've got limited time for doing this, they are not going to be on the ballot there, all because they did what they were told. And that shows, I brought this one up because it gives you an indication of the nature of these kind of battles to get on the ballot. It's almost like you can't win. You do what they tell you and you still have a problem. In Indiana, the Green Party had a reversal there as well, and they are now asking for a reconsideration. When you bring something to the appellate courts, they usually have like a court of several judges, and just a few of them will be hearing one case and a few of them will be hearing another case in order to process cases faster. But if you're dissatisfied with the decision at that smaller set of appellate court judges, on some grounds you can bring it to the full appellate court. And this is what they're doing in Indiana. They're asking for reconsideration by the full Seventh Circuit Federal Court. This has to do with the 2% requirement, but it was a requirement for the number of signatures that you had to get on your petitions. And the Green Party was arguing that this would cost way too much money, $500,000 just to get that number of signatures in Indiana. And in several other states, if you see here on your screen, several other states, the federal courts have in the past struck down these kind of petition requirements. And in this state, they upheld them, even though the state presented no evidence in support of the law, and the party submitted a great deal of evidence against the law. So you can see the courts are not always being very fair, to say the least. And my impression, having followed some of these cases over the years, is that the judges in these cases, where they're not outright hostile to minor party and independent candidates, they regard them at best as an annoyance. Like, you know this is a two-party system, you know you're not going to get many votes, why are you bothering to do this, why are you annoying this? So they don't take their complaints very seriously, they just see it as kind of brushing away the mosquitoes or something on that level. The establishment in our country doesn't seem to take seriously that we have such limited competition, even though we always complain about other countries limiting the competition in elections. We think it's better to have two parties than one, huh? What are you complaining about? Too bad if neither of those parties addresses your issues or represents your position. Why should you, you're not able to get enough people on board to get your party enough votes? Even though, how can you grow a party if you can't get on the ballot? How can you get and get your message out to people if the media won't cover you, et cetera, et cetera. Let me do one more here, and this is the state of Texas. This is more broad-based. There's a whole host of challenges in Texas, and they brought these to the federal court, and the Fifth Circuit there made an opinion, and they upheld virtually every Texas ballot access law that's detrimental to minor party and independent candidates. So it shows, again, the court system is not very friendly to these kind of lawsuits overall. They ignored almost all the evidence presented by the plaintiffs and merely said that the challenge law were upheld by past precedent. So they're going to go by precedent, whether it's reasonable or not, whether there's grounds for overturning those precedents. Didn't even respond to that kind of argument. So that's the state of our ballot access laws. Pretty discouraging overall. Now, in addition to ballot access problems, when you get to the general election, you're going to find that our voting system favors the two-party system. And it's hard for other parties to get traction for the reasons that I just mentioned. And so that there's incentives for people to say, you know, those other parties aren't going to, voting for them is going to be a wasted vote if it doesn't help them get elected, or if they can't even get far enough to get that 5% that I talked about in an earlier video that would allow them to get federal funding and show the world that they're making progress. So a lot of people just defer back to the two major parties in the general election. But there are ways of voting that would allow parties to grow by showing that they're getting support by the voters, who can then also indicate a preference for the major parties. Let me run that through you again. By using a preferential voting system in which you can show your relative preferences between all the candidates, that is, you're not limited to just picking one candidate, so you say, well, I should vote for the one of the two that's going to make a difference, even though I might like somebody else. In a preferential voting system, you can say, this is the one I really prefer. My next choice would be this one. And then, you know, if it comes down to these two, maybe I would say I like this one or that one if you press me to the wall. So one of these preferential voting systems is ranked choice voting. And there was a bill introduced in the Congress to bring ranked choice voting to all congressional elections in 2028. Let me give you a short video about this from Fair Vote, the main organization that's been promoting this over the last few decades. And I partnered up with Fair Vote for a while in Oregon to help bring ranked choice voting there. But I want to make a few comments about this video afterward. So here's the Fair Vote announcement about this.
Great news. The Ranked Choice Voting Act just dropped. Ranked choice voting is the fastest growing election reform in the country, and Representative Jamie Raskin of Maryland just introduced the Ranked Choice Voting Act into Congress. It would bring ranked choice voting to U.S. House and Senate elections. Why is ranked choice voting growing so fast? Because it is working in the places that already use it. It is ending the spoiler effect. It's delivering more positive campaigns. It's electing winners with broad support. And in places that used runoff elections, it's saving a lot of money by eliminating the need for two-round elections while preserving the same benefits. So it's time to bring ranked choice voting to House and Senate elections with the Ranked Choice Voting Act. Contact your senators and representatives today to support this bill.
So what I wanted to say is that ranked choice voting, although in some ways it's an improvement over our pick only one system, it does have its limitations. It's been around for well over 100 years, used in Australia for that long, and we do know that it fails to pick a winner that gives the broadest support overall. Now, Fair Vote's notorious for their promotion of ranked choice voting, in which they make claims that are not entirely true. What you just saw her claim in that video, there's a couple of points. They said it's working in a lot of states, or maybe she said it's working in all the states, but she didn't mention that it's not working in some of the states. They've had problems like in Alameda County here in California with how badly they counted the votes, because it is a complex system of counting and determining who's going to be the winner. And they found out that the wrong people had been elected, but they had no way of going back and changing that now, well after an election, and they've had problems in other states as well. So ranked choice voting is a kind of clunky system when it comes to counting votes, and there are new systems like star voting that are much easier to count the votes in, the formula for counting them. But fair vote not only it continues to promote ranked choice voting, but it's squelching other options like star voting or approval voting. It has actively campaigned against them in states where they are on the ballot, which I don't understand. I'd like to see electoral reform supporters get behind measures wherever they are and not impede the ability of us to experiment with different systems, see which ones work the best, see which ones the voters most prefer. This Ranked Choice Voting Act, what else did I want to say? It's not true that it always picks a winner with broad support. Alaska is the case in point. They have ranked choice voting now there, and virtually everybody who's signed on to this bill in the U.S. Congress is a Democrat. Democrats now like ranked choice voting because in Alaska, they elected a Democrat to the Congress, whereas the majority of the population is independent and leans Republican. And that is because there was a spoiler election. There were two candidates who were Republicans, one candidate who was a Democrat. When it came to the second from the final round, the one Republican was knocked off the ballot, even though that Republican was the most popular candidate of all of them. If you look at the way people ordered their preferences, that candidate was preferred to both the Democrat and to the other Republican, who was Sarah Palin. But they got knocked off first because they didn't have the most first choice votes. You ended up with some of those votes being reassigned to the Democrat, and now Republicans find that to be stacked against them. They're very anti-ranked choice voting now, and the Democrats are promoting it simply because I think a lot of them see, well, we elected a Democrat, so maybe it favors Democrats, which is the worst possible argument you can make for a new voting system, is that it prefers one party over the other. Excuse me while I get a drink. It is a preferential voting system, so it's somewhat better than what we have, but it's not the best system I think we could have. We could have proportional representation. That would be much better. We could have star voting. That would be much better. I'm not bad-mouthing ranked choice voting because I want to see this bill defeated. I don't think it has a chance of going anywhere, frankly. They've introduced bills like this a number of times, and they didn't get a heck of a lot of traction. But as we go forward, there'll be more and more interest in alternative voting systems, and I do want to spread the word that there are alternatives to ranked choice voting. If you're finding ranked choice voting is not a if it doesn't appeal to you for any one of a number of reasons, it's a complex voting system, that it's failed in some districts, that it does have occasional spoilers, especially when there's three strong candidates. There are alternatives out there, and I hope you look for them and support them. So there'll be a lot of interest after this election. Once again, it looks like it's going to be a close election between the two major party candidates, which means that the presence of these minor party candidates on the ballot could be argued, it will be argued by the supporters of major parties, that it's causing a distraction because it causes spoiler elections, the wrong person was elected, yada, yada, yada. So it'll be another excuse to try to keep them off the ballot in the first place. So if we're going to make a change, let's think about it and do the best possible change. I guess that's it for this week. My little editorial there at the end. I guess I'm feeling still feeling a little down about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. suspending his campaign, as I was hoping that this would present a big challenge to the two major parties. Maybe that we're still going to have some kind of major realignment between the two parties, with people moving back and forth, some Republicans turning towards the Democratic Party and supporting Kamala Harris, some former Democrats at least, like Tulsi Gabbard and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., going into the Republican Party. I'll still be watching to see what this election presages for the whole party system, hoping we can get beyond the two major parties and being stuck in this constant situation where they agree with each other on so many things that we don't have any real opportunity to present a challenge to them on the issues of continual warfare, corporate corruption, and things like that. I hope Kennedy can introduce these things into the Republican Party. I hope they take him up on it. Not sure how that's going to work out as well. Anyway, talking way too long. Thanks for watching, And, oh no, one more thing. How are they on ballot access overall? Let's bring up this thing and see if you can see it on your screen. It's going to be kind of tiny. This is my count as of this week of which of these leading alternative candidates are going to be on the ballot there. So if you look down that left-hand column, you should be able to find your state and look across and see which candidates are going to appear there so you can start deciding who you want to look into. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is now certified for the ballot on 32 states. And as I said, he's still in the courts to determine whether he's going to get on or off the ballot in a couple of places. Chase Oliver of the Libertarian Party, 45 states. He's on the ballot, almost all 50. Jill Stein of the Green Party on 38 states. Those two will be on the most ballots of any of these candidates. Randall Terry, still just 11 states. Claudia de la Cruz, actually on the ballot in 18 states, more than the Constitution Party and more than Cornel West. Cornel West on the ballot in 16 states so far. And that last column is Peter Sansky of the American Solidarity Party, who's going to be on the ballot in 8 states. His party represents Catholic social justice teachings, so if you have any interest in that angle, you may want to look into them. If Kennedy's not on the ballot and you're not going to vote for Trump, maybe some of these others you want to take a look at, or if you weren't interested in Kennedy in the first place, or you're not interested at all in either of the major party candidates, these are the people that you might have a choice of. I will also have this list up on my webpage, politicaldharma.com, as well as sending it out on to my Patreon subscribers at patreon.com politicaldharma. And that is it for this week. Goodbye. Thank you very much for watching. And I'll be back sometime this week. I've got an interview with somebody. And then on the weekend, I'll have my usual update. Thanks. Bye.
With ease, I see the chains are breaking. We've gained our focus. The moves we're making will prove to determine our self-worth as a passenger on this vehicle Earth.